the boy band from what do you call Korean popular K-pop. Yes.
There we go. Thank you. If I can have everyone's attention. Morning. Thank you all for joining us this early morning. First of all, before we start, I'd like to thank IAA and Akamai for sponsoring this session. So this is a bit of an interesting one. We have been looking at the data over the last year or so, last 2-3 years or so, and we wanted to understand where the diversity and inclusivity in tech initiative has been going, and you'll get your chance. You'll get your chance. I'm in charge, so. So what we decided to put together was a question as to why we're not seeing the numbers where they need to be. And this panel, which is sort of pseudo-panel, pseudo-debate format, seeks to sort of start the discussion towards that answer. We don't know if we'll reach an answer today, but we want to start having that discussion now. And the motion being proposed, as you will see on the screen, is, I should read it, female participation, female participation in the technical and or engineering roles of the internet is not growing. What?
There's the small little, it has to be.
Oh, no, it's fine. The Zoom is for the projection, so yeah, you read through it. So anyway, female participation in the technical and or engineering roles of the internet is not growing and in some cases potentially declining, not due to a lack of opportunity, but because of personal interest in choice, which in other words is saying that most women do not willingly choose to get into the field. Now, to set the stage, we'll go into a little bit of data, but before we do that.
There's a point of clarification, really,
okay.
On the motion.
Right.
So in the motion, you're actually, in my view, you are mixing two different definitions. In the first paragraph, you say female, which is the sex, and in the final paragraph, you say women, which is the gender. So, what are you actually trying to? So what is it you're actually trying to say? Which one is it? Is it female or women? Because of course, one is a subset of the other in modern definitions.
Right. So I think for this specific discussion, I'm focusing on female, women. Just for this, we have to start from somewhere. From somewhere, and this is where we're starting. So
I just wanted to make that point clear because it was ambiguous.
Is that clear now?
Yeah.
Better? Okay. So for the motion is Isabel Odida from GCOR, Tukso, Gemnet, and Keen from Myanmar IX. And then against the motion is Norel, IAA. Thank you for the sponsorship. Carla, APNIC, and Seiso from APNIC as well. So before we start, we shall have a poll. A quick poll. So if you can pull out your mobile phones quickly, go to the URL, use that ID, and just quickly let's see where people stand on the idea. You're also welcome to vote, not that, we might not know where you stand. Right, sure.
Put the code back.
It's choice. They didn't get the code.
All right, sorry. That's the code.
You can start voting now.
It's okay, the man said you can vote.
Okay, all good? All right, let's see where we are. Okay. Not surprising, but this is a good baseline. So we'll come back to this at the end of the debates or the panel and see where people stand. But okay? Right, so we have that squared away. Okay, so everything I'm going to use to set the stage is obviously based on data that we've been looking at over the last couple of years to sort of support the motion, or supporting of the setting of the motion. So what we're seeing in the last couple of years, specifically in education, secondary, high school, and university, is that women are outpacing men in general in terms of enrollment, scoring, reading, mathematics, science, etc. I think you can extrapolate this for pretty much every democratic country in the world. Women are exceeding men, girls are exceeding boys in school performance. However, what we do find is that the data is showing that on average, men are choosing STEM fields for employment or for further education, and women are choosing what has been known as HEAL jobs: health, education, administration, and literacy. For every 3 HEAL jobs, you only get 1 STEM. And in all the HEAL jobs that are being occupied by women, that accounts for 76%. So the majority of HEAL jobs are occupied by women, as you can see with the data. These are the jobs that are most overwhelmingly performed by women in general. As you can see, they are very HEAL-oriented, humanities, that sort of thing. And these would be the jobs that are overwhelmingly performed by men. So technology, that kind of thing. There was a study that was done in 2018 that looked at 76 countries, and those represented about 90% of the global demographic. And what they found was that the more equal men and women are, the less they want the same things. Specifically that as societies become more egalitarian, the sexual differences between men and women are amplified. 6 personality traits were looked at. That's the link of the study. 6 personality traits were looked at: altruism, trust, risk, patience, positive and negative reciprocity. And they typically found that women were more altruistic, women were more trusting, more risk averse, and less patient, and also had more positive reciprocity, i.e. they were able to repay favors more willingly, and men were more of the opposite. What the data also found was that the fulfillment of basic needs tends to be gender neutral. So for example, food, shelter, and health. Once those are solved for, people then seem to experience more freedom to do what they really want to do. Now, a lot of countries were surveyed, but the differences were largest in Canada, the US, the UK, Sweden, and Australia. That means that those societies had much wider gaps between the sexual differences, whereas those gaps were significantly lower in Ghana, Iraq, Pakistan, and Iran. You will see a pattern here. This is economic incentive will obviously drive those levels of differences, which is to say that in wealthier countries, women tend to choose more female things, and in wealthier countries, men tend to choose more men things. And the opposite is true in those other countries. Okay. Now, you'll get your chance. So for this panel, what also the studies show is that really the issue tends to be more in the EM of STEM than the ST itself. In Canada, for example, 59% of science and technology degrees are conferred to women. In the US, the majority of biology degrees are conferred to women. However, in engineering and math, and specifically our jobs here in computing, women still represent a minority of the participation. That said, though, in poorer and or developing countries, more women are more likely to graduate and perform in STEM fields than in wealthier countries. For example, Central Asia, 48% of women are in R&D, 41% in Algeria, which is more than the US, for example, and in Thailand, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Georgia, Armenia, and Kuwait, the majority of researchers tend to be women. The data is saying that women are underrepresented because for some reason they would rather do something else. And in the West, women have more freedom to choose, as opposed to what the paradox showed was that as there was more gender inequality, women were more likely to graduate in STEM out of an economic incentive of need, because those STEM fields were more likely to yield greater income. So we know it's not for lack of trying. There is significant investment going into facilitating female empowerment across the board, education, careers, etc. And yet 50% of all females that enter STEM leave within 10 to 12 years, twice as many than any other field. We also see, this is from way back 2016, but just to illustrate, obviously it gets better with time. As far back as then, women were outpacing men, girls outpacing boys in results in school. And we know that from the latest data from UNESCO is that girls are now performing equally or even better than men in maths and science. However, girls perform exceedingly better than boys in reading. And Thailand is a great example here as well, but Saudi Arabia, for example, is where it's most pronounced. And we also know that there's no lack of programs around the world supporting and encouraging women or girls from as little as age 2 to focus on STEM fields as they grow up. You can't say the same for boys joining non-STEM fields, for whatever reason that is. We just can't find any supporting data for that. There was a prospective study that was done and published in SAGE journals that followed almost 1,500 people over 15 years and found that boys actually do prefer non-STEM fields, but they lack the skills to go into those fields. And what are those skills? Those skills are experts in maths with good verbal skills tend to less likely pursue STEM. So for example, women are much better in reading than boys. And which explains one of the reasons we find that they're most likely to not choose STEM. Boys, however, are less skilled in reading, although more skilled in math, so they tend to go for STEM as opposed to non-STEM. However, in combinations where you have a high math achiever and a high verbal skills achiever, those overwhelmingly tend to be women. So, in essence, the study shows that the comparative advantage of men and women is what forces them to choose the subject they go for. And for men's comparative advantage, that tends to be math, even if they might not be as comparatively advantaged in reading. And for women, it's the reverse. We also see that where boys, and essentially also, I think, men in the real world, are less qualified to do a STEM job, they will still pursue it anyway. And the reason for that is men know how to bullshit more in general. Or let me say, are less scared about bullshitting more. And females find it a lot more difficult to lie on their application about their capabilities. Whereas men have no problem doing that. So, for example, you'd see here that boys were more likely to do so than girls despite having poor grades. Girls would only opt for STEM if they had above average grades. For men, less than 1% of the bottom 1% of results still yielded an interest in going after STEM. Whereas for women, it was only the top 20% of results that yielded an interest in going into STEM. And they corrected for self-confidence, interest in science, academic mindset, and obviously your own identity with whether you think you're a mathematician or not. As a side note, we see that 80% of teachers in elementary grades tend to be women. Men, not so much. Pay is a factor. Teacher bashing is another issue. Boys often aren't encouraged to follow the softer side of things. And then obviously male teachers tend to be accused of all sorts of things, so there's less participation in that field. Which one? This one? The teach. Yeah. So what I was trying to highlight with these two slides, is that. Yeah. So what I was trying to highlight in these two slides, and we'll get into it, was that there is a lot more attention going towards getting women into STEM than there is getting boys into non-STEM. This is what the data is showing. Okay. So the disparate impact theory essentially says that if there's a statistical inequality, for all intents and purposes, that's proof of discrimination. And the data is basically saying that that doesn't support the theory. What the data is showing is that economically people are incentivized to go for job utility, which is pleasure and outcomes, as well as what you're good at, comparative advantage. There seems to be a bigger drive in the political space to achieve a certain outcome, which tends to obviously be driven mostly by men, politicians in the West that want these outcomes, but don't necessarily take into account what women would like to do if left alone naturally. Right, so on that basis, boss, could you please get some water for the, yes, thank you. Yes, and I did this too.
Women are better at getting water. Didn't you know that?
So, with those, I will ask each of the panelists to spend 3 minutes giving us the opening remarks with whatever they have prepared, whatever's on their mind, whatever they've seen, and we can go from there. We'll start right at the end. Carla.
Well, no, you're supposed to start with the for, not with the against. But I think you've done.
Mark, point of order here. A point of order.
Okay.
You're supposed in a classical debate, the rules of debate go that you give it to the government, not the opposition. The government get to go first, and then the opposition.
This is my
and
government.
then we get a
I'm
right
making the
reply.
rules.
Apparently, we have new rules for debate.
I am the president
I'm so
of
glad.
this.
I'm so glad. But perhaps, excuse me for defaulting to perhaps the
Carla,
UK laws of how
could you
debates
start,
work.
please?
Over to Carla.
It is not a classical debate, as you can tell. So.
There's a lot of passion in this room, that's for sure. And I appreciate that. And thank you for presenting the facts.
The motion.
Sorry, that pause was deliberate. So I think that it's really clear that there is evidence that women are still choosing not to go into those subjects or those particular areas in their careers. But it's about the underlying reasons why they're choosing not to. That is actually what we are debating here. So, and I do have to say, I agree that that's come a long way over the last number of years in terms of the support that women have to make choices about where they want to actually spend their energy and time. But if we just take one of those data points that you presented there, and that is about women outperforming, or girls outperforming boys at school. They're outperforming them in all subjects, not just in STEM subjects. Correct. So they have more choices. And again, because of the fact that they have more choices, they are discriminated against as women in STEM-based careers. The pay gap is still 20% difference. So again, I would ask you, why would you choose to go into a role where you know that you're discriminated against and you know that you're going to be earning 20% less than your male peers, just as one point of interest? I do think that there is also, there's a number of other factors, but that was just one particular point that I wanted to point out. We still have a very long way to go to kill the stereotype that exists and the confirmation bias that keeps on recurring, that does actually prevent women from having the opportunities that men have in these areas.
Thank you. Isabel, you go next. You're not ready? Okay.
Okay.
Tukso.
Yeah. I think I'm here because I'm a woman.
Right.
Working in this industry since the graduation with a big gap, like 6-7 years gap, studying somewhere. And I'm not a debater at all, but I think I will just share my experience. Yeah, thank you.
Say so?
Yes, Sai Somwang, anyway.
And he's not from APNIC, by the way. He's from the last ministry.
No, I work for the project, Switch project of the APNIC Foundation, and the project supports women and gender diverse in tech, especially internet development field. The project supports technical, the opportunity for the participants to take technical courses and both what we call professional and personal development for the participants in 6 economy at the moment: Thailand, Philippines, Cambodia, Vietnam, Laos, and Timor-Leste. And throughout the years, it begins in 2020 with 4 economies, and Laos and Timor-Leste joined later in 2022. There were evidence that through our project, right, that opportunities given to the participants really helps them and strengthen them to advance in their career, especially in our field. And for your information, I'm not the gender specialist, and I am a father of 2 daughters with 1 wife, so I would like to share my personal experience on the topic, and we'll talk about this later, right?
Fantastic. Keen?
Hello, my name is Daniel Kai. I'm from Myanmar. So, whoever arrived to Myanmar, and especially ethnic people who arrange training in Myanmar, they notice a lot of women attending the training. Whenever they visited to the technical area like ISP and OC, they notice many women are there. Myanmar is quite different from other countries. Whoever arrived in Myanmar and participate in our community, they notice a lot of women are participating in this technical area. So that's why I think such program didn't consider Myanmar. So we also have restriction for the long ago. When we attended engineering school, government restricted. Just only the small portion of women they accepted. While the, let's say, total 700 engineering students, they allowed just only 50, around about 50 women they allowed to attend engineering school. And also for the government sector, after the school, government sector, if they like to apply the job to the government sector, they call only men for the job. Women didn't get the chance to get the job. But I noticed, especially for the communication department, not only that, but also most of the area, they think engineering fee is just for the men, not for women. So we could not apply to the government job. But I noticed in 1993, they start calling women. At that time, most of the men are going outside to further opportunity, and they are not joining government organization, but for the other outside job. So the government do not have no choice, but have to call women also. So nowadays there is no restriction, or even applying the school and applying to joining to the job, there's no more restriction. So more and more women are applying the job, government job, and also ID fee, so they are getting more and more job. Still for the networking area, ratio is not equal. Still now, more men are joining to the networking area. So when I joined this networking area, I was only one woman in that area. I'm working with other men. So, but they all respect me. It's based on the ability in our country. Most of the people in their mind, there is no issue between men and women. So that is our culture, existing culture. So that's I'm sharing my experience. Thank you.
Thank you. Nora?
Thank you, Mark, for the opportunity to ventilate this debate. It's wonderful to actually to have people out of the back rooms talking about these different issues. It's good because we know that in the back rooms there is a lot of discussion about, well, she doesn't really want to do this, does she? She doesn't really like it. She's not very good at it, really. So, you know, it's great to hear some of this out in public. Let's hear it, let's examine it, let's talk about these things. So if I could just run through some of the things that Mark opened with. That women are getting access to education. Well, that's fantastic. This is just wonderful that over the last 10 or 20 years, we've been getting greater access to education. That's fantastic news. So how many thousand years beforehand that we weren't getting access to that education, we're going to fix that magically this week. That's great, that's great. That women are taking up this opportunity to get access to education is wonderful. Unfortunately, it is largely because women need to prove that they have the ability when many, many men, it is assumed that they are competent. It is assumed that they are capable. Whereas the women, well, we need to examine, is she up for this job? Is she capable for this job? Then what qualifications does she have? Well, she needs to have 3 of them. I have a degree in physics, a master's degree in telecommunications engineering, and most of an MBA. Apparently, I'm qualified. Apparently, I'm qualified now. Okay, but I've worked with many, many men, many of whom I really super value, who've not finished high school, who've not had these sorts of qualifications, and there's never been that expectation that they had to have these qualifications, and yet somehow I need to. I mean, I've enjoyed them, they were great. I could talk also about one of the earlier jobs that I had where the professor in charge of the School of Physics where I was working at the time threw me out of the all-school meeting because we don't have your sort in here. Out you go. This was 1980-something. Yeah. And look, I can give you many stories of these sorts of things of, oh, look, she's too loud, she's talking too much, she's just too conspicuous, she's too assertive, she's not nice. And then when I'm nice, I'm too soft. Okay. So this social egalitarian colloquies that you went through are wonderful to have. We're now allowing people to have these sorts of feminine qualities. And that's a good thing, that it is okay to be caring. Again, when I think of my own career, at this point in time, I've had to take time off work to look after my kids, which I adore and I appreciate that. I had the wonderful support of a great husband who stayed at home while I pursued this actually well-paying career that you get in the ICT industry. Boy jobs, yay, boy jobs. Sorry, where was I up to? I've lost the plot. But yes, it's wonderful that we can now all be, yes, I've had to take time off to look after my kids, and now as my elderly parents, well, as my elderly mother is in need of care, I've been looking after her too. How many of the men in my peer group have had to look after both their kids for extended periods and their elderly parents? I wonder. But many do now, but the majority, I suspect, do not. They've been able to draw upon women's support to be able to do that. And then Carla mentioned the pay gap data. There's a fantastic study, well, not just study. This year it has changed that in Australia, the companies over a certain size all have to report their gender pay gap statistics. And so this huge amount of data came out this week about the gender pay gaps within this wonderful developed country where apparently it's all altruistic and we all get access equally to all of these jobs. There's a 20% pay gap difference in the ICT sector. And across the board, something like a 20% pay gap. And that the women's roles are skewed towards now the lower skilled and rather than the more senior areas. But hey, there's no real difference, is there? Harassment stats in the STEM sector within Australia, yeah, I can pull them up a bit later too. The sexual harassment and assault statistics are not great when you compare our industry to others. And apparently also, I've got this de facto role within the industry that if a woman gets harassed, you come to me and I'll call it out, okay? Apparently that's my job too. I'm an engineer, by the way, and a manager, CEO of an IX anyway. The programmer culture, we'll mention that more later. And yes, also where women have not really succeeded traditionally is that in the wielding of power. Men seem to be really good at wielding power, and perhaps that is through the help of the excess physical strength, or the extra physical strength, sorry, not excess, but the way it is used. Perhaps that is where we have had to use other techniques rather than just sheer force in order to maintain our credibility and our status. I should stop, because then I'll get on to lying versus the quality and self-efficacy argument. But anyway, sorry, Isabel.
Last but not least, Izzy.
Hi everybody, I'm Isabel from GCORE, and I'm here to partially support the motion based on one, my experience, and also what I have witnessed, not only from a developing region, but also in general as well. Some of the things that Narelle has said, I have been able to experience, like being called aggressive because you're trying to step forward and sharing this is what you want, and yet we don't have to do that. I come from a region where some of what we chose for school was chosen. I mean, we didn't have to choose for ourselves. They were chosen for us because other professions were seen as a joke. So you were either a doctor or an engineer or a lawyer. That's what your parents wanted for you. But then we are now moving away from that to what we are actually interested in. And like Mark said, when it comes to STEM in developing regions, women are actually flourishing as opposed to the developing regions, which I've also witnessed. Also, I would like for us to kind of stop complaining, look at the issue at hand, address the ugly truths, and find a way forward for the women like us who are actually interested, and see how to move forward. She talked about the salary gap. Not so long ago, I requested for a salary increment, and I stated exactly what I wanted, and my boss was in shock. I said, yeah, well, men do it all the time. They do it all the time with no, I won't say remorse, but they do it all the time. They do it so easily. I want to be able to do it as well, and casually. This is the first time I am coming out and speaking and stating what it is that I want. So I'd like for us, the women that are interested, to be put out there and made things easy for us. Not easy, Mark, I know you don't like that word, but where do we go from here after we have now witnessed, or that we've unveiled the naked truths about the women's interest in the industry?
Thank you, Isabel. The floor. Who wants to go first? Tina, that wouldn't be you, would it? Okay. Dressed for battle. Okay.
All right. So I am honestly flustered by this topic that I'm not even sure I'll be able to get everything out in the thing. But I'll start off with saying I'm Tina Morris, Amazon, AWS. Normally I don't mention my ARIN affiliations, but just for credibility in this crowd, I'm also on the ARIN Board of Trustees. I have been volunteering and participating in the RIR side of the world for 20 years, something like that. It's been a while. It's been a minute. And also for credibility, I'm American, but I participate in this region. I've been participating in APNIC for a decade. I have 5 LIRs in this region and a significant amount of resources. So I am a member of this community. And I attend your meetings and I go to these countries and I see the differences country by country. At every single meeting I've ever attended, a woman has come to me for support. because of bias, unwanted sexual attention, unsure how to be seen by their boss. They see that I'm making it. I'm usually in a room of all men, not so much anymore because my team is actually predominantly women. But because I've done it, they look for the support. And I am so happy to see young women that aren't dealing with honestly, the shit I had to. I am so happy that that's happening. But to say this problem is gone is absolute baloney. It is, you say women are graduating with STEM degrees. Guess what? They are going into STEM jobs and they are leaving because it's so toxic. They don't stay because it's horrible for them. They have to fight every day to be seen. They are left out of, oh, the guys are all going out to this event. Oh, we don't want to invite her. It won't be her thing. So she misses those opportunities to network and get to know her colleagues. I have had bosses in large companies that won't meet with me one-on-one. There could be a sexual harassment complaint. I've been passed off for promotions because, you know, I was single at the time and he has a family depending on him. So he gets the promotion. All these things have happened to me. They're not okay, but they are happening today to other women still. If you're not experiencing your company, awesome. But also, if you're not looking around and making friends and helping enable other people that are having issues, women, people of, you know, gender diversity, people in different communities that aren't represented, if you're not finding them and saying hello and seeing if you can make their meeting better, you're failing the people that are coming up behind you. I'll just stop there for now.
Anyone? Yes, Barry.
Sorry.
Why in Apricot we don't have a detoxification workshop for all males? So I say that, give an example on the security stuff. So some of you know Medica Kale. Medica Kale is a really good best friend of mine, right? So if you know cybersecurity, you should know Medica Kale because she was one of the pioneers. I'm at IS, so I'm lucky because I've been fortunate to get opportunities to detoxify myself from the environment so I can take advantage of all talent around. So Medica is coming in to replace me at ISC, taking care of a security job. I got these geeks, guys, they have to take over. So I set up a session because I got to introduce one of the brains is a guy. He's got all the toxicity on him. You got to view it that way. He's got all the toxicity with him, right? I had to set up a situation where Medica comes in and her and I, you know, we catch up. We're doing all this whiteboard work. We're doing this engineering. I'm intentionally making the meeting late, right? So this guy has to sit there and watch us geek out. We're solving problems. We got the whiteboard all filled up. It's all filled up with it. And finally I said, okay, this is your new boss. Medica's your new boss. You know, I walk out, right? And 2 hours later, he's coming out and he's flabbergasted. Did you know Medica did this and Medica did this and Medica did this, Medica did this, Medica did this, right? So all of a sudden, it was an intentional detoxification to clear the path. Now, I was taught that in the United States Air Force. That was a class I had to go through to understand that here's the biases I have. All right. If I want to get the maximum, in the Air Force, we teach this, if you want to get the maximum out of your workforce, all right, if you wanted to do that for mission efficiency, so this is the Air Force terms, how do you compete the mission, right? You need everybody together, then this is what you need to teach. And it was to the guys in the class, right? Why don't we have that here? Because that's, to me, it's always been, that's the problem. It's all the men are the problem. And we're not doing anything to really help them detoxify and learn these sort of skills. So it's a suggestion for our next, even though I'm on the program committee, I should say that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jonathan Brewer from New Zealand. I'd just like to relate one of my experiences as a trainer. APNIC 42 in Colombo was one of the many events I went to that had a Women in Technology lunch. And during this Women in Technology lunch, a woman working in a telco in Sri Lanka got up and told a very passionate story about how she goes home to her town. Most of Sri Lanka is rural. It's a very, very rural country. She goes home to her hometown and her family berates her for having left the community, for not having children in the community, for not taking care of her family, for having a career. She's selfish. She's a disgrace. This is what her family does to her. So after being a trainer, I went and spent some time living in the Philippines, working for an ISP. Philippines has amazing graduation rates of women in all fields. In fact, I think there are more women in university and women graduates in the Philippines than men by far. And the ISP I worked for had plenty of women, engineers too, but they don't stay because the family pressure is just extraordinary. Me, as a childless man in the Philippines, I'll get in a taxi. They'll ask me about my children. Literally, they have said to me, "You need a new wife." With my wife in Bangladesh for Sanok, we walked around town. We walked through the university. I know it's pretty inadvisable because we did attract a lot of attention, but we sat down to have some ice cream at the university, and a young woman student came up and talked to us, talked to my wife, was incensed that my wife was putting her career in front of having children. I mean, my God, I just see this everywhere. And I'm just astonished that we don't have more women in here. I'm astonished that we don't have more women on the panel. I'm astonished, Mark, that you're running this. I mean, the gall. But anyway,
I'm not afraid of such.
my comments are finished.
We need
Thank
to
you.
have the discussion. As Barry was saying, this is what we need to do. So don't be shocked.
Hi, I'm Sienna from AP Nick, and I wanted to say, when I saw this panel description, I was incensed. But I think it's awesome. I think this is a really good discussion, and I agree. We are training women who are very competent to go into STEM jobs, and they're personally choosing to leave. Now, why is that? Like we've said, in Australia, one of the most equal countries in the world, there's a 20% pay gap for women in STEM. So we work 5 days, we get paid 4. And then we go home and we do all of the labor at home.
I don't.
Well, yeah, I do half the time because I share care with my ex-husband. So half the time I fully do. And I've just got a nanny, and it is the most incredibly liberating thing I've had to ever do in order to be able to work competently at work. In APNIC, we have really brilliant men who do amplify and support women, but I think that's pretty unusual across the board. So I think this is a very good discussion of identifying what are the invisible barriers, such as all the things that we've, the microaggressions and the things that we've spoken about, that exhaust women, that exhaust us to such an extent that we would choose a lesser paying job where we don't have to fight every day to be seen and heard and recognized for our contribution. And I think that when men clue on to the fact, and I really appreciate when they do, all of the invisible labor and the emotional labor and the excess stuff that comes along with being any kind of minority in a community, they acknowledge that and see it. It is such a relief. And that's why we have such brilliant advocates, male advocates in the room. And thank you so much. Please keep doing it. Thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you, Mark.
Sure. Thank you.
I saw a hand at the back before. Ms. Jung, you still want to?
Hey, hi everyone. I'm Ling. I'm the national coordinator for the Swiss position for Vietnam. Yeah, College of Science up on the stage. I am the share my observation. Actually, I did not stay in any foreign country long enough to see what happened outside of my country. But what I share here in Vietnam is that not the same, not focus on the same, but in gender equality and in general. I observe that for the accessing the education is completely no different between male and female or girl or boy in Vietnam. Yeah, it's equal. Also, in terms of assessing the land, right, male or something related, also equal, no difference. But the difference is very similar to, I agree with the lady, me too, yeah.
Narelle.
Get the power and taking the leadership role in it's a kind of the thing women in Vietnam also are not confident to get that. I think the reason because of the gender norm itself. It's very the unpaid house job is different belong to the woman, the wife in house. We also taking care of the kid is the mom's responsibility. Yeah. So the very normal idiom they said that not three kids is because of the mom. Yeah. Also the messy house, a dirty house. Oh, they would blame the wife. Yeah. No, why is that? It's the gender norm. And I really went really with the sweet as MC team of the sweet process. I felt quite jealous with the wife of the three MC in our team. Really, they are taking care of their kids. They are care of their wife. But I am not receiving at home. Yeah. So, but yeah, it's very fun, very interesting joining with the Swiss project, and I also see the progression in our community. So we in Vietnam, yeah, we share very similar experience. Yeah, and I'm looking for the writer in some very soon. Yeah, thank you.
So let me ask this one question, and then I'll come back to you. Okay. So I just need to ask a quick question for to the panelists. Is it feasible? Well, is it a feasible objective to have 50-50% participation of males and females in the technical and or engineering fields of network ops? Or if not, then what would we consider the marker of success to say that we have achieved what we want to achieve? Is it the level of participation? Is it deeper than that? Is it less than that? Who wants to go first?
I will.
Okay.
It's obviously not going to get to 50%, 50-50. But what I would like to see, and I've been crying for this every Women's Day, is the sub stories like she's mentioned. I've forgotten her name. What was her name? Tina. Yes. Yeah. The sub stories that she's experienced, the ones that other women have experienced as well. For me, I'd like to see that come to an end. I did not experience any of that, which I'm very grateful for. I have been lucky throughout my career. And even the stories that the other women who could have been interested, but then choose not to because of what they have heard, I didn't get to hear any of that as well, because I was inducted into the industry by my brothers who looked out for me all the time. So I didn't have any female role models or any other women that I could hear these things from. So I came in from that angle. And I was also lucky that the team I joined right after university was a group of very wonderful men. So I never got to experience any of that, but I got to see it happen to others. So for me, my wish is, even though we don't get to the 50-50, which I know is not going to happen, it's the harsh truth, it's the reality. Can we at least now find middle ground? Yes, you're saying, yeah, we're not the women who are not interested, but then the ones who are interested, how do we keep them there? How do we make sure that, okay, you're coming doing the same job as I am. We went to school together. I probably did better than you did. We're now here, same job. I don't want to have to be aggressive, even though that's the situation we're in, because to meet the men's, get to the men's level, we have to be aggressive, to prove that we can do just as good. We're forced to work twice as hard. I think I remember saying to Mark, there is no day I delivered a project on time or late. It was either 2 weeks before or maybe a week before, because of trying to prove that, yes, I can do just as good. And I don't want to give anybody any excuse to say, told you, it's a woman. So for me, I would like for us to say, yes, this is the reality. Now, let's make it better. Let's figure out how to work on it.
And for context, what country is that experience you're talking about from?
Oh, Uganda.
Okay. Carla, do you want to answer the question?
I think we're focusing on the wrong metric,
Okay.
quite frankly. If we are looking for percentages to confirm the sense of how women are accepted in STEM, we are absolutely looking at the wrong thing altogether. So for me, success is when women actually do feel like they are not sidelined because of the boys' club. Women do actually feel like they have the same opportunities stepping into an interview room or into a boardroom, and that they're not going to be discriminated against, where the threat from microaggression right the way through to harassment has disappeared. When women are literally just accepted as human beings, and where we blend in with men or whatever gender you happen to identify with, that for me is success.
How do you suppose we measure that?
Well, again, it's quite nuanced, isn't it?
How about just a reduction in the actual reported statistics of sexual harassment and abuse?
Yeah,
That
do
was
think
it. And a
it's all of
reduction
those-
in the
Yeah.
pay gap. That would be a really good start. Yeah.
It's all of those things, but it is a lot more nuanced than saying, well, we want to aim for 50%, because I just don't think that that's necessarily real. And as I said, it is really more a situation of asking women why it is that they're making the choices they're making,
Right.
rather than subjecting it to a percentage, which is just not relevant.
Tuksa, any thoughts on the question?
Seeing that 50-50, that reminds me that we had equal number of girls and boys at the uni. And looking back now, I think including guys including both males and females, some of them are still in the industry. And some of them left to take other roles like management, So I think maybe picture is different from place to place, and experiences can be different from person to person. And some of the stories I hear, there's diversity panel sessions. Some of them relate to us, and some of them do not relate to us. Like at one session, I heard that one of the senior engineer lady, she was sharing how she overcome the challenges having kids and also same time taking the manager roles. And during her talk, I understood that she had 2 nannies to look after her babies, but in Mongolia, having a nanny is a luxury. But I have 2 kids, but actually the main challenge to me is the technical skills we lack. Usually we talk about how to survive in the industry is a minority or a woman, but I think we should start talking about how to enjoy our work so that we can stay in the industry. Personally, I had opportunities to work in other areas or at a higher level, but I choose to stay with my technical role because I enjoy the
autonomy and flexibility that comes with my technical
Right.
in the organization.
Right. Nora?
So the question was, what metric should we be looking at? Is 50-50 a reasonable target or not? Targets I find are useful things. So why not have targets? Targets are there to help to improve things overall. Whether or not we will ever get to a 50-50, I don't know. I don't know. I don't think we will in the next 5 years or 10 years. How long might it take? Well, I can conceive of many utopias, and that would be one of them, where we could all participate happily and equally in whatever field we wanted to do and achieve whatever field we want to do. Perhaps with the emergence of AI, a lot of this, we won't have to do this anymore. We'll just have to command the bots and off they'll go and they'll do all the things. But we still need to be able to have societies that value everybody's contribution and empower everyone to participate well and confidently and to build ourselves and to build our communities to stronger, more resilient communities. Because, hey, the people with the power toxic relationships, they've really done us a disservice overall as human beings. So yeah, is 50-50 a good target? I don't know. I think targets are helpful and they do give people some effort to work, a focus to improve things. I'm thinking back to another point in my career where I was actually the .com era, and I was manager of a systems engineering team for a large telco, and a lot of people, we were madly recruiting, and people saw me as a safe place to refer their female colleagues, so their daughters, their girlfriends, their female friends who were qualified and competent and wanted the opportunity. So I ended up with a team of 17 with 6 women on it. And then, of course, some of the guys started going, Narelle, we really support what you're doing here. We really support you. And I went, what are you talking about? What am I doing? Oh, this one woman affirmative action campaign you're running. Hang on. I'm just getting the referrals. You're not getting the referrals. So I had a bigger pool to draw from than a lot of my male colleagues did.
Right.
And the women that came to work for me felt that they were supported, that they were valued, that they could progress in their careers. And I think most of them have. But in other areas, they did not feel they got that same level of support. And I think that's an important thing, that if you give your team members support, regardless of what gender they identify with, then they will get on to achieve. And that's what we need to do.
Keen, any thoughts on the question?
So in my country, 50-50 is not possible. Let's say in some area, women are 100% occupying. So that is fantastic. Let's say for the government area, in long ago, I worked at the ISP, one of the ISP. We have to access to the another data center location, which is a government location. So it's a nighttime activities. So my request is to send a female engineer, because all the NOC are occupied by female. So most of the female, they are applying government job. I don't know why, but I think they may think there's a more stable and more and more men are not applying government job. So women are getting more opportunity. So government-related area, minority, women are more populated than men. I don't know for the higher rank, but the lower rank, for more women are occupying there. But for the private sector, say for the networking area, men are still dominating. Even for me, I'm a young internet exchange, I'm leading, but most of them, my engineers are men, not women. But previously, I called internship. So I hope all the men and women, they apply internship, but I didn't get women. Finally, I asked specifically, someone to find women to join internship, because there is a 2 type of subject in computer school, computer science and computer technology. When we call, most of the most of the men are joining computer technology, that's related to network, but women are joining to the computer science, not related to us. So we don't have a chance to call women to our area. So
I'd like to explore that a bit further and also with the panelists as well. So in your country, men are disproportionately unavailable. Like, you know, Myanmar, they have to go to 5 wars. So women have to take up the rest of the ones to work to run society. But so in that instance where women automatically, for some degree or other, have opportunity unencumbered because the majority of the workforce will be women, so there won't be any toxic traits. But still, you find that women are joining more government jobs, and
Yes.
on the networking side, even as much as there aren't many men in Myanmar, it's still mostly men, and women do mostly
men.
computer science, not computer technology. That is fascinating to me because in some sense, one would say Myanmar is majority female right now, but women are still making the choices they are making, as the data has shown that I shared earlier. I would like to hear what the panel thinks about that specifically, and as well as the floor when you get a chance.
Some of these
Yes.
countries are still run by the army, which is dominated by the traditional male-dominated power structures. So while the men might be off fighting the war, that the issue of the war is still dominating society. And the impact of that power imbalance is still very much in people's minds, in the women's minds, as they choose their roles. They need to choose for safer paths. That would be my suggestion, and probably easier for me to say from outside a war-torn country.
Yeah.
Who else would like to answer that, to just weigh in on that a little bit? Because I'm quite interested in, yeah.
And before I came here, you know, the military service law started. So I'm afraid I can lose all of the men employee. So I start looking for the also a female employee. So that is the situation in Myanmar. Thanks.
Anyone else has any thoughts on that?
It's almost like what it's currently happening in Sudan as
Yeah.
well, because most of the men have gone out to war. I sent to fight, and then the women are left to have to run their internet infrastructure, do all the STEM jobs that whether they like it or not. And now it's become a norm, and it's what has created interest for them. So a situation has created interest for them, not
Right,
choice.
but interest is interest, right? And
Sorry.
what I'm trying to get to is Keen is basically saying that she's out searching for women to come and join her, but they are not. This is what we're trying to get to. Like, why is that? Anyone wants to try it from,
there was
you want to try? Oh, say something.
Yeah. Can I say something? Just for the latest questions about the situation in Myanmar that you try to find some more women to join you, right? I can share some example from the Switch project. Our target was to get 25 participants from each economy, but in the first batch, we could only get in total 74, which was supposed to be 100 women to join the project. And there were, I think the first batch, there were only 4 economies, so the total is 100, right? And I think there are a lot of factors that affect that numbers. A lot of, like, maybe it was the first time that the project was run, and maybe it was not well known to the community. But the second batch, it's quite different. We have 6 economy, but the total number of participants were 161, which was supposed to be 150. So we exceeded the target. So we, I think personally, because of the first batch outcome and the what you call the the good things that it come out from the first round. So the second round was we could receive a lot of attention from women and gender diverse in our field, and that I think that's the evidence that shows that it's not only about interest but also other factors that I mean can convince and persuade the community to join the project. And back to your question about the 50-50, I think it's a good number. It's good to set the target, but it depends on other factors as well. Yeah.
You had a comment on the
Just
web chat?
Yes, we've got an online comment from one of the Switch participants in the Philippines, Ms. Catherine Ramos. I am a faculty member of the engineering in the Philippines. Yes, it would be great to achieve 50-50 in enrollment and graduation. We do reach these in some engineering fields, but another metric that we need to consider is the rate of increase in enrollment of female students. Another issue is to improve the syllabi and curriculum to target female students, since male and female learn differently. This could be started very early, even in grade school and high school. Just a specific example, I teach biomedical engineering, and this would have been a fusion of engineering and health sciences. It's a relatively new program, but we have more female than male students this year. This is very telling. Even in other engineering programs, more female students, for example, would pick chemical engineering. When engineering female students are asked what their expectations are, they look for human applications of engineering or how they could apply engineering skills to improve human lives.
I would quickly like to echo that one. I've taught biomedical engineering in Australia at the University of Wollongong, and their intake is 50-50 males to females in the biomedical engineering program. In environmental engineering programs, again, you similarly see high numbers of female enrolments. And then once they hit, as others mentioned earlier, once they hit their career paths, some of the things get stacked up against them, and you do see higher dropout rates in the professions for women than you do for men. Again, we need to correct the supports and systems in place to keep that pipeline working. But the pipeline is broken. The pipeline is broken from primary school, from preschool right through to university and beyond.
You had something you wanted to say.
Hi, I'm Caitlin. Work with Amazon, work under Tina for full disclosure. I also just wanted to apologize for not speaking into the mic earlier. I'm still learning how to speak up myself. So thank you for bringing up the women leaving the field, because you mentioned a statistic earlier about how women seem to leave STEM fields about 10 to 12 years into their career paths, which I think is very telling, because 10 to 12 years is probably right about the time after you graduate college and you get into your career that you might want to start having children. I come from the US, where I suppose you could argue that male and female equality has progressed quite a bit over the years. We're backsliding at the moment, unfortunately. But traditionally in the United States, the support for women who have children is absolutely abysmal. Women do not receive any support for caring for children. Health or childcare is prohibitively expensive. For most women, it is much easier to stay at home. I know everybody I know who has children has chosen to stay home because it is cheaper for them to live on one income than it is for them to have a wife working and yeah. And I just also wanted to add that I think this conversation and this discussion about women not being interested in STEM also does a disservice to men, because I think that we're also implying that men are more interested in STEM and therefore must go into STEM. And I think that also could explain why we don't see men who go into the traditionally feminine fields. So I think these conversations just continue to perpetuate this stereotype, and we're harming men just as much. Well, not just as much, but we are harming men as well as women.
Do you still want to say something? Or
Yeah. Was there someone first?
no. I know.
Okay.
Go for it,
Sure.
man.
No, thank you for this. I mean, I was a bit frustrated when I first read the motion, and when we had a small discussion the other night. I'm like, this is I'm going to become. But it's a really interesting discussion, and it's one that's needed because things need to be out in the open. We can't continue with people just thinking one thing or the other, because there needs to be an understanding on both sides. Or multiple sides even. It's also interesting. So, Narelle, right? Thank you for bringing that up, because it was something I was initially going to say anyway. The thing is that pipeline from preschool all the way into adult life, that's where it's actually broken. It's broken at the beginning. You know, when you have kids and you have society telling children that this is a boy's job and this is a girl's job, and kids pick that up when they're 2 years old. That's how young they pick that up. So it's not only through adult life where, for example, females need to be like men to be at board level and things. It's actually stems, in my view, from 2 years old, 3 years old, where society, where schools, where parents and the older siblings, the uncles and aunties, they actually say, oh, what is it you're going to do when you grow up? And actually tell them that this is what you should be doing.
And isn't she pretty?
Yes, absolutely. Well, I noticed Steve noticed on the thing that there was a pink and blue in terms of on the statistics, and that does come down to
by accident, undesigned.
But that does show exactly like when you go and buy clothes for children, and how actually the colors. You know, why is there a difference in colors? Do females not like darker colors? Do males not like lighter color, you know, all that stuff. So it's right from the beginning, and this is where we need to change as a society. We can work on what happens in adult life, but we need to be sure that we are also doing things that start earlier in life.
I want a quick response if I can. Sorry. I'm just thinking through, again, things that worked for me as a child. At age 2, I was given a Meccano set to play with, and I used to play with building things out of Meccano. Well, that was fun. I would follow my father around, who was an electrician, and he used to send me off to run cable under the house. You know, apparently that was normal. I thought that was normal. And that's what I did. You know, he would take things apart. I would take things apart. Somebody would give me a doll to play with. I would take it apart, put it back together again. So that was too easy. Can I have a harder one, please? Apparently this is weird. Mark tells me this is unusual. Apparently, and I certainly, did not want Barbie dolls in the house when my kids were little, but people still gave us Barbie dolls in droves. I mean, really. Margot Robbie, fantastic woman, amazingly capable.
Yeah, look, I say it's unusual because the data that we're extrapolating is looking at the general situation, right? So you have the extremes, 20% here, 10% and 10% there. You've got the 80% in the middle, right? So the data is looking at what happens in most cases. What you went through.
The thing is, you've got to be so tough and so resilient and so well prepared to get through.
Yes, but what I'm saying is, in general, what tends to happen, and your experience is fantastic, but you're a minority of what tends to happen, and it's great, right? Right, exactly. This is what we're trying to get to, right? That's what we're trying to get. Like, how do we get to that? But right now, you're a minority. It's great, but you're a minority. Well, there is that other data that, today most kids are born to single parent homes. So there's that issue. There's not many fathers anymore as there used to be. So there is that element, but that's divergent.
Abilio?
Yeah, I'm the national coordinator for the Timor-Leste for the Switch project. I will tell you about the experience of my country. Of course, we are struggling to change and learn the experience for other country, the development country, the rich country, the high economy countries. a small islands, small country with 1.3 million population only. We have to look in, if we are targeting about the number 50-50, we have to looking for the whole sectors, the governments, the political willings, our constitution, the government decree law, and also for the country economic and social. The most impact now, the developing country, the rich country, continue supporting the small country to be a better life in economic and social. If we just only talking about education, about things that are related to the technology, but we are not looking for the economies and the social impact, it will be continuing. In experience of Timor-Leste, we, for the national parliaments, our constitution already put on the constitution 30% obligation for the woman to be a member of the parliament. I'm proud of this. And for the public servant, we also put 30% for the woman to be obligation for the recruitment process. It's already have to be balanced, that for each position, we have to be considered for 30% women and other diversity. We just only talk about the woman, female and male, but other groups or the diversity also include. We learning from other experience based on the struggling, and we make step by step better and better, because it's like related. If we, for the community side, for the organization side, but it's not coming for the goodwill from the government decisions or for the political decisions, it also will be impact. On the other sides, it's economic and social. Of course, we have to be still facing about the numbers of domestic violence. And one of family in my country, we still have a huge number of children. One family can have 4 or 5, even 10 children. Still continue. That's why I'm talking about social impact and the economies. We don't have any problem facing with the numbers of the women work in the institution. As a male, sometimes I feel that if we are not balanced, of course, I fight also for the woman to be more promoting, more compared to the men working in the telecommunication sectors and the technology sectors. The number are increasing now. The problem is if we are talking about 50-50, the balance. If we have to look at after also the balance, if male and female have to be together and supporting each other, it will be, if we are targeting the number 50-50. If only woman targeting the 50, as a male, I believe that it will be create a difficult side. So we have to make something that strategy is balanced for starting. Thank you.
We should be starting to wind down. So what I will do is combine the last rather controversial question with final remarks. So let me just put that up. Yes, okay.
The practice of the training.
Yeah.
Mindful of the room.
My name is Ulka, and I work with the RIPE NCC in Amsterdam. So we're the equivalent of APNIC for Europe, Middle East, and Central Asia. I'll keep this short. So just to give some statistics from RIPE, in the RIPE region, there's about women employed as ICT specialists, about 15 to 25% in Western Europe in the industry, and about 25 to 35% in Eastern Europe. But if we look at RIPE meeting attendees, we average about 15% women. So if we combine East and West Europe, we should be at about a quarter of our attendees should be women. One of our diversity efforts, along with Women in Tech, has been to bring more young people into RIPE meetings to make sure that the expertise that the community has built up over the last 3 decades gets passed on to the next generation.
Microphone's dead.
Oh, it's back. So then we have the dual problem. We are trying to bring young women into the RIPE community. And that brings us to the second problem, which is of power structures, which Norel mentioned earlier. The decision makers are very often senior managers who are very often disproportionately male. And we hear this from junior engineers, male and female both. I don't get to go to the RIPE meeting because my boss always goes. And then comes the third issue when it comes to looking at our working group chairs and how people participate in the RIPE community. And our working group chairs are also disproportionately male. But if you look at women and the fact that they have to prove themselves at work, come home, do a lot of the work at home. And if you look at how our community volunteer work is done, it's more unpaid labor. So I actually have a question for the room. What can we do as a community to make space so that it's easier for this group to participate? Thank you. When we go out into coffee, I'm happy to hear your ideas.
I think actually that leads nicely into the question of what RIPE are doing is fantastic. I think you've sort of pivoted to what we're looking for, younger people. And of course, in that youth, if you can find more women, that would be fantastic. But, you are where you are. And that would be obviously the final question here, which I will ask you all to think about and answer and provide your closing remarks. Is, we have a massive issue right now of skill in the community across the board. And we only have a limited amount of time, energy, and resources to fix that. So, do we put that towards recruiting anybody that's interested? Or do we still focus on supporting more females than males? Or do we, or can we both, walk and chew at the same time? Say so. Want to go first? Include your closing remarks, please, because we're towards the end now.
Oh, wait. Let me just share the experience from Laos. Laos is very supporting the women in the community. Women in Laos has 2 special days dedicating for themselves. The one is the International Women's Day, which is the March 8th. Next week, they have the holiday for the women, and another one is in July, which is the Women's Union's Day, and they have that day dedicated for them. And we have a lot of women in the leading roles in the country now. Yep. And as a husband supporting my wife, she works in the government, and I try to balance the work at home with the kids. And there was one morning that she had an urgent call and she had to leave home very early, and I have to take care of all the kids, get them prepared to go to the school, which normally we would do it together, right? And that day I was late for work, but I accepted that because it was her opportunity and her to grow in her career. And I really support the women in Laos and in my organizations. And I would like to read out the message from one of the Switch participants. She is from Philippines. She said, while it is true that women have more opportunities today than ever before, it's also important to acknowledge the additional burdens many women face as primary caretakers and managers of households. These responsibilities can significantly limit their ability to participate in speaking engagements or pursue certain career paths, while personal choice and interest play a role. It's crucial to recognize the structural barriers and societal expectations that can influence these decisions. Efforts to address these barriers and promote inclusivity can help ensure that women have equal opportunities to engage and contribute in the various domains.
Thank you. Keen, thoughts on the question and final thoughts?
So for me, our community should give equal opportunity for both women and men. So after the women join to our job, especially in our case, IT job, we should look at what are their abilities. Based on their abilities, we should assign them tasks, no matter women or men. And women have a lot of job, including having a children. At that time, community in this our community should help each other, taking his tasks, hard tasks, and why she is away. And that is my remark.
Carla, thoughts on the question and final thoughts?
Can you pop that question up again? Sorry, I lost it. Oh, okay. Yeah. Recruiting. I think that the focus on recruiting should not necessarily be directed at women, but I do think that we've already discussed the fact that the pipeline is broken. We've discussed the fact that we need to kill the stereotypes. And we've also discussed the fact that there are role models at the top end of the industry that are missing, because you described Narelle, for example, as an anomaly. So that means I'm an anomaly as well. But I do think if we just focus on recruitment and particularly encourage women to be involved, I feel a tremendous amount of responsibility as a woman in a senior role to actually to provide that safe place, exactly as Narelle explained. When she was recruiting for her team, there were a lot of women that came to her naturally, and I've had the same thing, that there are women that come to me all the time looking for a little bit of support, so as role models. So I believe we have to do more to encourage women, not just focus on recruiting to stem the brain drain. Yeah.
Isabel, final thoughts and question?
I also agree on the fact that we should go ahead and do the recruitment for anyone that's interested, but also, like she said, try and create some sort of environment that's conducive for women. I also think that this is just a suggestion that I witnessed. You know how for the longest time in the UAE, when people have gotten jobs and come into the country, some of them, their employers take away their passports from them, and then some of them are treated in a certain way, especially because they've come from a foreign country and looking for employment there. They've introduced a training. It's 30 minutes. It's mandatory. Anyone who's coming to work in the UAE has to do this training, and basically you're taken through your rights, what you should expect, and what your rights are in the country as an employee, what your employer is allowed to do, what he is not allowed to do. Why am I saying he? What your employer is allowed to do, what they are not allowed to do. I think we could try and figure out how to introduce something like that within the industry. I think it would kind of support the motion of getting more women interested. We didn't really talk about the things that prevent interest for women. besides what she talked about, how it's very expensive as you're growing a family. But then I think one of the things that has also kept women away is the stories that we hear. I promise you, if I had the stories that Tina shared, I would not come through. I wouldn't want to come through tech. I'd get scared and I'd be like, oh, that's not an environment I want to go through. So I think that while we share the things that happen to us as women to protect us, I think we should also share the good things, the wins. You've won, you've come a long way, you're doing great. Thing for you and you and myself. I think we should also share those things and also not necessarily sweep the bad stuff under the rug. Yes, make them aware, but also let's be really loud with the good things that are happening for us and how we're winning. That way we also get to bring it through some interest. Let them discover these things while we hold their hands, discover the bad things while we hold their hands and make them feel comfortable and I want, where am I, not loved, but make them feel comfortable and well taken care of. And also for the women who are coming through, yes, we are in an aggressive environment. It's going to come a long way for us to have that changed. So when we express interest, let's also put our back into it and like push forward as well. And please do not ignore this. He said they should start having, what's the training he talked about? Yes, please, let's also have that. It would be nice to have that.
Anyone want to say something real quick?
I just wanted to respond real quick. You're
Yeah.
absolutely right. I am a big proponent of not going down the memory lane of all the things that happened 15 years ago. They're not relevant. And unfortunately, they're happening today still in some people's case. But I actually am a huge advocate in not dwelling on that, not bringing that to the table. Instead, finding positive ways to bring people up. And that's why I was talking about finding people, helping them be heard. I've seen several men in this room do that today, where they said, wait a minute, the woman was still talking. And that happens all the time. And as an advocate, as it doesn't matter what gender you are, you need to do that for the people that don't have a voice yet. And my organization, for one, is doing a program to grow leaders. So they're taking people that they see potential in and actually training them and giving them sponsors and mentors and trying to push them into things. And I would advocate for everybody in these communities to find those people that you think have a lot more potential and help bring them up, find those ways to bring them to a meeting with you and share something and do something. And I just wanted to say, I absolutely agree. We don't need to go down this whole woe is me road of victimology. That doesn't do anybody any good, but we do need to find ways to support each other.
Narelle, final thoughts?
I agree with you that we do have this, well, obviously we have this massive skills shortage, and it is important that we do keep on growing the next generation, to put that effort in to grow that next generation. So the premise that I'm coming from really is, well, we should not exclude half the population. If we've got a skills shortage, let's keep on working to bring folks in and support them as they're in, and to grow the sort of culture that we want, that we admire, that we appreciate within the industry. And that means that when it comes to events and training sessions, as was mentioned earlier, we need to send the women and not have the long list of reasons why we don't send the women to conferences like this. I'm wearing a T-shirt today about our Sisters program, the Internet Association of Australia's program, the Sisters program, where we sponsor women to attend the OSNOG conference. We give them a day's training the day before, which covers career planning, presentation skills and your legal rights, as you mentioned, as in the workforce. And then the next 2 days, they hit the floor of the OSNOG conference from a position of support, power, and yeah, I can do this. I am a capable person. I can do this within this industry. So they have that strong nexus that they can build from and support each other, and hopefully support each other throughout the rest of their careers. And we're really proud of that particular program, because again, throughout my career, I've seen so many times, and I've heard it so many times, oh, we're not sending her because, what she's doing is too important. We're too busy. We can't spare her gone from the office at the moment. You know, we need her. And then we can't send her because she's not important enough. So we don't send her because she's too important, and then we don't send her because she's not important enough. So then we also need to nominate women and help support them into these positions where they can grow and learn from. And allow yourselves to be represented by women. Let them do this job. And then when we have panels and speaking slots, encourage the women and support them in order to give the talks on their presentations and the projects. I've heard a lot of rubbish presentations over the years from men. I don't mind hearing a few rubbish presentations over the years from women as well. They don't all have to be brilliant. So encourage them to get up and speak. Honestly, I get more requests to speak on the diversity panel or the women in engineering panel than I've had over the years as the lead architect for Australia's second biggest telco. I stopped accepting a lot of those invitations for a while because I just had it. We need to be able to support people to go and deliver these presentations so that we keep growing them and that they grow in confidence and that they can be seen doing those roles. Yeah. Okay.
And then so fine. And then for the final vote, please join the website. Put in your final thoughts for your votes. And before we close out, Tukso, please.
Yeah, I think it's very important to have a strong interest in this area to stay in the industry. So yeah, it's also awesome good to have some activities to recruiting or encouraging more women to apply for the job. For me, from my experience, I was the only candidate when I get recruited, only female candidate when I get recruited in my previous job. And later on, my manager was sharing that I had the most willingness or interest in the role. That was the reason I was recruited. Otherwise, all other candidates were male, and human resource was interested in recruiting me because of the continuity of the job. Yeah. At Denmark, we have many strong senior level engineers attending, and they seem very strong role models. And I think that is also a very important factor to encourage more women to apply for technical roles and also to stay in the industry.
Thank you.
Okay, 30 seconds.
50. 50. Really
Just talking about the opportunity for women to be seen and giving presentation through our Switch project. We give that opportunity for the participants to be visible throughout their journeys. A lot of them got the what we call the support to do some research, and they got opportunity to present their research finding in front of their boss, their upper management, and their colleagues. And after a year or two, then we see evidence that they got advanced in their career, got promoted into higher positions, and that's really a good news for us and good outcome for the project.
All right, thank you. So I see we started off here, 23 disagree, 8 agree. And at the end of it, 16 disagree and 6 agree. So we lost a few people on either side, but it's a good place to start. Looks like everybody still has their hair together, so that's not bad. We haven't almost killed each other, all our frenemies yet, but I'm hoping that this is a start to a different kind of conversation for this specific topic. There's been questions about whether this needs to keep happening at Apricot, NANOC, EPF, AFIF, whatever. And I think, as uncomfortable as the discussion is, it does need to be had. So hopefully this is a new start to some different directions. Thank you all very much. Program committee.